Have you ever asked yourself why, after everything, the hurt, the heartbreak, the abandonment, some people still find their way back into your life? You know the ones who walked away when you needed them most, who left you alone to pick up the pieces of a shattered trust. But now, after months or even years, they return, and they're asking for forgiveness, seeking to rebuild what they once tore apart. But why? Why do they come back, after all the pain they caused? This isn't just about getting a second chance. This is something deeper, a pattern we all recognize. It's a cycle of attachment, regret, and longing that keeps pulling us back to people who may not deserve a place in our lives. You may think their return is a sign of love, but it could be something entirely different. The truth might surprise you, but before we dive into that, let's slow down and look at the bigger picture. In our lives, we often find ourselves caught in repeating cycles, chasing after fleeting moments, clinging to the past, and constantly seeking validation from others. But today we're going to look at this through a different lens, the lens of Buddhist wisdom, a philosophy that teaches us to release attachment, to let go of past hurts, and to truly understand the deeper forces that shape our relationships and our actions. Are you ready to uncover the real reasons behind their return? Because what you'll discover might change everything you thought you knew about love, forgiveness, and self-worth. 1. Guilt, a lesson in letting go. Let's pause for a moment and talk about something that has likely touched every one of us at some point in our lives. It's powerful, it's pervasive, it's guilt. Guilt is like a shadow that follows us wherever we go. It wraps around us, twists in our stomachs, and often clouds our minds. We feel it when we hurt others, when we let people down, when we don't live up to our own expectations. But here's the truth that many people don't want to admit. Guilt often isn't about you, it's about them. You see, in Buddhist philosophy, guilt is deeply tied to attachment, especially the attachment to our ego. We want to feel good about our actions, and when we don't, we search for ways to justify our decisions. But in doing so, we stay trapped in a cycle of self-inflicted suffering. Guilt doesn't provide true healing. It often keeps us stuck in the past, unable to move forward, unable to grow. Imagine for a moment that someone you loved, someone you trusted, left you. At the time, they were so sure they were doing the right thing. They walked away convinced that there was something better for them out there. Perhaps they believed they could find happiness elsewhere. Maybe it was the allure of freedom that tempted them, the idea that living without you would allow them to feel unburdened, unchained. They leave, perhaps even with a sense of victory, thinking that the grass will be greener. After all, they chose their own path, right? But as time goes on, things begin to change. They begin to feel that emptiness that lingers when we make decisions we don't fully understand. The freedom they sought, it feels hollow. The excitement they thought would fill them, it fades away. And the attention they sought from others, it never quite brings the peace they imagined it would. They thought they'd be happier, more fulfilled. But the reality is far different from the illusion they chased. Then they see you. It's not something they expected, but it happens. They see you thriving. Your life is no longer tied to their decisions. You've moved on. You've started building something new. You've found strength in yourself, in your journey. The sadness they expected from your absence, it didn't come. Instead, they see you growing stronger with each passing day. You've found your peace, and it stirs something inside them. And then it happens. The guilt creeps in. It doesn't come rushing in like a tidal wave. No, it starts slow. A whisper in the back of their mind, a quiet voice that says, "Did I make the right choice?" It's a fleeting thought at first, one that they can push aside. But then it grows. It becomes louder, harder to ignore. They begin to remember the small things, the late nights you stayed up listening to their problems, the times you supported them when no one else did, the way you stood by them when the world seemed against them. They remember your patience, your loyalty, your love, and in those quiet moments, it dawns on them, they didn't just lose someone, they lost you, the person who truly mattered, the person they took for granted. But here's the painful truth they might not want to face. This guilt isn't really about you. It's not about the pain they caused or the loss they feel. No, it's about them. It's about the discomfort they now feel because of the choice they made. It's selfish. Guilt, when examined closely, is not about healing the hurt they caused. It's about easing their own emotional discomfort. Buddhism teaches us that attachment to these emotions, like guilt, only leads to suffering. It's not the path to liberation or peace. When someone returns to you out of guilt, don't be fooled. They aren't coming back to heal the brokenness of the relationship. They're coming back to relieve their discomfort. They want to soothe the unease that they now feel because they see you moving forward without them. They see you thriving, and that in their eyes is a painful reminder of their past mistakes. Now let's talk about what happens next. They come back, knocking on your door, apologizing, asking for forgiveness. They might even try to reignite the old spark, hoping to recreate the past. But remember, this isn't your responsibility to fix. Their guilt is theirs to bear, not yours. They need to sit with it. They need to face the consequences of their actions. True healing doesn't come from fixing someone else's emotional baggage. It comes from understanding the impermanence of all things. People change, relationships evolve, situations shift. The truth is, sometimes the most healing thing you can do is let go. Let go of the need to appease their guilt. Let go of the need to fix what's broken. You've already done the work of healing. You've picked up the pieces they left behind. You've grown stronger because of it. When they return, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that you need to make it right. It's easy to feel like their return means they've learned something, that they've changed. But that's not always the case. When someone comes back after hurting you, it's not about you, it's about them. They are trying to undo their guilt, trying to make themselves feel better by drawing you back into their emotional orbit. But in doing so, they aren't healing the relationship. They are simply seeking relief. Remember this: true peace and healing don't come from seeking to make someone else feel better about their mistakes. They come from understanding the transience of life. People come and go, things change. And sometimes the best way to heal is to let go, to let them carry their guilt, and let you continue your journey of growth and self-realization. You see, when you allow someone back into your life, you're not just letting them off the hook. You're sending a message that your boundaries, your peace, and your self-respect are negotiable. And as someone who values these things, you cannot afford to make that compromise. Your growth, your peace, and your journey towards self-realization are far more important than appeasing someone else's guilt. So when they return, asking for forgiveness, seeking to reignite what was lost, don't get swept away by their words. Don't let the guilt they carry become your burden to bear. Let them sit with it. Let them face the reality of their choices. You've already done the work to move on, to heal, to grow stronger. And that strength, that inner peace, is yours to protect. You don't need to give it away to someone who isn't ready to appreciate it. Let them carry their guilt, for it's not your responsibility to ease their discomfort. Instead, focus on what truly matters: your growth, your peace, and your journey toward becoming the best version of yourself. The path ahead is yours to walk, and it doesn't need to be weighed down by someone else's mistakes. 2. Fear of loss. The nature of attachment. Let's talk about something that has deep roots within every one of us. Fear. It's primal. It's visceral. We've all felt it in different ways. That sudden tightening in your chest, the rush of anxiety that creeps in when you face something that you can't control. The feeling that something is slipping away from you, that is fear in its most basic form. But what does it really mean to fear loss? And why is it that this fear often emerges so strongly when it comes to relationships, the people we care about, and the ones we've let go? In Buddhism, fear is seen not as something external, but as an emotion that grows from within. It is deeply tied to attachment, to that sense of ownership we feel over the people in our lives. We fear losing them not because of love itself, but because of the attachment that we have placed on them. This attachment is what binds us to suffering. When we let our fears control us, when we let our need for control over others dictate our actions, we lose sight of what we really need, which is freedom, peace, and clarity. Let's take a moment and picture this scenario in your mind. Someone you once loved, someone who shared your hopes, your dreams, and your vulnerabilities, walks away. At the time, they seemed so sure of their decision. Maybe they thought they could find someone else, something better. They believed the grass was greener on the other side, convinced that freedom from the relationship would bring them the happiness they were looking for. They thought they could find that perfect match, the one who would fill the gaps they felt, the one who would make everything right. But what happens when the grass turns out to be brown and withered, and the freedom they thought they craved feels empty and isolating? It's a harsh truth, but it happens. They begin to realize that the world they thought was filled with endless opportunities is actually full of emptiness. The attention they sought from others never quite meets their expectations. The excitement of being alone fades as loneliness creeps in, and the very thing they thought they didn't need, you, is the one thing they can't seem to escape from their mind. Then they see you, the thing they never expected. There you are, thriving, moving forward, living your life, not in the way they expected, but in a way that shows you've grown, that you've healed, and that you no longer need them to fill the void they left behind. You are stronger, more focused, and more at peace than ever before. And as they witness your progress, something inside them shifts. That nagging feeling starts to grow. Did I make a mistake? Now, let's take a step back. What is this feeling of fear really about? It's not about love, it's about control. When they fear losing you, it's not because they love you in the deepest, most unconditional way. It's because they fear losing the place they once held in your life. They fear no longer being the center of your world. They fear losing that special spot, the one they once occupied with ease. It's not a loss of you as a person, it's a loss of the power they once had over you. In Buddhism, we learn that attachment is the root of suffering. We attach ourselves to things, to people, to outcomes, and in doing so, we create expectations that often lead to disappointment. We cling to the idea of what we want, rather than accepting what is. And here, that attachment to control becomes clear. They want to come back, not because they have had a deep realization about how much they love you, but because they are terrified of losing the grip they once had. They remember how you were there for them, how you listened to them when no one else would, how you supported them without asking for anything in return. They remember the warmth of your love and the strength of your commitment. But now things are different. You're no longer waiting for them to come back. You've built a life for yourself. And they see this, they feel this shift, and it's terrifying. To them, it's not just that they've lost you, it's that they've lost the power to control the narrative of your life. It's a sobering realization. The man or woman they once had wrapped around their finger is now someone who no longer needs them. You've moved on, and in doing so, you've become someone they don't recognize, someone they can no longer control. The fear of loss is not about missing you as a person, but about losing control over the dynamic that once existed. The attachment they had to the relationship, the way it made them feel important, has been shattered by your independence. And that, in their eyes, is more terrifying than anything. This fear of loss is not rooted in the purity of love. It's about their own insecurities, their own attachment to the comfort and control they once had. And the more you move forward, the more you live without them, the more they feel that grip slipping away. You see, when you stop clinging to someone else's presence to define your happiness, you become a mirror reflecting their own fears back to them. You no longer validate their need for control. But here's the hard truth. It's not your job to fix their fear. It's not your responsibility to ease their discomfort or to return to the role they once assigned you. When they come back with words of apology or promises of change, remember that it's not about them loving you. It's about them wanting to reclaim the control they lost. They want to believe that they can come back into your life as if nothing has changed. But everything has changed. In Buddhist teachings, we are encouraged to let go of attachment. We are reminded that the more we cling to something, whether it's a person, an idea, or an outcome, the more we will suffer when that thing inevitably changes or fades. The only way to move forward with grace and peace is to release our grip, to recognize that nothing is permanent. People come and go, relationships change, and in that impermanence lies the freedom to live authentically without the chains of fear or attachment. So, when they come back looking for another chance, remember this: the fear they carry is not yours to bear. It's their fear of losing control. It's their fear of no longer being a part of your story, but your story doesn't depend on them anymore. You've moved forward, and you have the strength to keep moving, whether they are by your side or not. They were once the center of your world, but now you are the one who holds the power. The only power that matters, the power to choose your own path, to let go of attachment, and to live in the present moment. Their fear is not your responsibility to soothe. Let them deal with their fear, their attachment, and their need for control. Your role is not to go back to the past, but to continue moving forward with courage, with clarity, and with the wisdom that only comes from releasing what no longer serves you. The more they try to pull you back into that old narrative, the more you need to remember you are no longer defined by their fear of loss. You are defined by your own freedom. And that in itself is the greatest gift you can give yourself. 3. Validation, the ego's hunger. Let's pause for a moment and dive deep into another powerful force that often drives our relationships, sometimes in ways we don't even realize. It's the force of validation. In today's world, it's so easy to confuse validation with love. We think that when someone seeks our approval, it means they love us. When they need to hear that they are enough, that they matter, we feel needed, and in turn we think we are loved. But here's the hard truth. Validation and love are not the same. In fact, in Buddhist philosophy, love, real love, does not require validation at all. True love is grounded in compassion and acceptance, not in the need for approval or recognition. And yet many of us are driven by this very hunger for validation, especially when it comes to relationships. What does it mean to seek validation? It means to crave recognition, to long for praise, to constantly search for someone to tell us that we're worthy. It's an insatiable hunger that comes from the ego, that part of us that wants to be seen, admired, and reassured that we matter. And here's the thing, when someone comes back into your life seeking validation, it's rarely because they genuinely love you or want to rebuild what was lost. No, they're returning because their ego is hungry. They're seeking to fill a void that only temporary praise or external attention can satisfy. And let's be clear that hunger is never truly fed. Think about it for a moment. When someone is with you, when you're giving them your time, your love, your attention, they feel seen, they feel important, they feel like they matter. You become the mirror that reflects their worth back to them, offering them a sense of value that they might not be able to find within themselves. It's a beautiful thing to love someone, to help them see their worth, and to lift them up when they doubt themselves. But the issue arises when someone begins to rely too much on that external validation, when they start looking to you to fill the emptiness inside them, to be their source of self-worth. And when they leave, or when you're no longer around, that external validation disappears. They suddenly find themselves in a void, looking for validation in places where it can never truly be found. Social media likes, meaningless compliments, shallow attention from others. But none of these things can fill the deep hunger of the ego. It's a hunger that constantly seeks more and more, yet is never truly satisfied. And so, they look back at you, the person who once validated their worth, and think, if I could just get that back, I would feel complete again. And so, they return, knocking on your door, telling you they miss you, that they want another chance. But here's the thing, they don't really miss you. What they miss is the way you made them feel. They miss the way you made them feel important, valuable, loved. They miss the validation you gave them, and they want that back. The truth is, when someone is seeking validation, they're not looking for connection. They're looking for a quick fix to feed their ego. They're looking for that high, that rush of knowing they matter, that rush of hearing someone say, "You're special, you're enough." But what they often forget, or don't realize, is that real love, the kind that is rooted in compassion, does not rely on that kind of constant reassurance. The ego craves validation. It thrives on external approval, and when that approval isn't forthcoming, it withers. But real self-worth doesn't come from others. It comes from within. When you are truly at peace with yourself, when you have cultivated your own sense of value and purpose, you no longer need to rely on others to make you feel worthy. You recognize your own worth, independent of anyone's praise or acknowledgement. The Buddha taught us that true peace and happiness are found within ourselves, not in the external world. The ego, with its need for validation, is an illusion that keeps us trapped in a cycle of craving, seeking, and never feeling truly satisfied. And yet, many of us get caught up in that cycle, offering ourselves up to others to validate their sense of self. When someone comes back into your life, pleading for another chance, remember this: they are not coming back because they've realized the depth of your love or the beauty of the connection you shared. They are coming back because they miss the way you made them feel. They miss the way you validated their ego. And if you let them back in, you're only feeding that hunger once again. You're giving them the very thing that will keep them trapped in that cycle of seeking external validation. You're offering your time, your love, your energy, and your worth to someone who hasn't yet learned to find those things within themselves. The problem is, when you keep feeding the ego's hunger for validation, you're not helping the other person grow. You're enabling their dependency. You're letting them believe that their worth is defined by others rather than by themselves. True self-worth, as Buddhism teaches, is about releasing the ego's demands for validation. It's about finding peace within, understanding the impermanence of all things, and recognizing that your value does not depend on anyone else's opinion of you. When someone comes back seeking validation, you have to ask yourself, do I really want to feed that hunger? Or do I want to help them learn to find their own peace, their own sense of worth? In a way, offering validation to someone who hasn't learned to validate themselves is like offering a band-aid to a wound that needs stitches. The wound is still there, still raw, still unhealed. The pain remains beneath the surface, and by offering that temporary fix, you're prolonging the suffering rather than addressing the root cause. True healing comes when we stop seeking validation from others and start learning to love ourselves, to see our own worth without the need for constant external affirmation. So what should you do when someone returns seeking validation, asking for a second chance? The choice is yours. But understand this, if you choose to offer them what they're asking for, if you give in to the ego's hunger, you're not truly helping them. You're not offering them love. You're feeding their need for external validation. True love, the kind that is compassionate and unconditional, doesn't rely on these shallow forms of approval. True love encourages growth, independence, and self-acceptance. Buddhism teaches us to let go of the ego, to stop chasing external validation, and to focus instead on cultivating inner peace and wisdom. It reminds us that true love is rooted in acceptance, not in the need to be constantly reassured. If someone returns into your life, claiming they miss you, ask yourself this: do they really miss you, or do they miss the way you made them feel? And if it's the latter, do you really want to feed that hunger again? The path to true love, both for yourself and for others, is not about constantly needing to prove your worth to someone. It's about releasing the need for validation, recognizing the impermanence of all things, and embracing the wisdom that comes from understanding that we are enough, just as we are. And when we learn to embrace this truth, we are no longer slaves to the ego's demands. Instead, we are free to love deeply, to live authentically, and to find peace within ourselves. So, the next time someone comes back into your life seeking validation, remember, true love does not require this kind of reassurance. Love is not about feeding the ego, it's about releasing it and finding peace within, independent of anyone else's approval. And that, my friend, is the truest form of love there is. So why do they come back after hurting you? The reasons are complex. It's not just about their regret or their desire to make things right. It's about guilt, fear, and the insatiable hunger for validation. They come back because they are looking to ease their discomfort, to feel better about their choices, to seek reassurance for their ego. But none of these reasons, no matter how convincing they may seem, have anything to do with your worth. Your worth was never tied to their actions, their regrets, or their return. It was never about what they did or didn't do. Your worth is found in the peace you cultivate within yourself, in the wisdom you gain from each experience, the good and the bad. Your worth is defined by the strength you find in letting go, in recognizing that you are complete, regardless of anyone's choices. You don't need anyone to return to you in order to feel validated or loved. That love and validation come from within. When someone comes back into your life, it's not your responsibility to fix their mistakes, ease their guilt, or feed their insecurities. It's not your role to become their emotional crutch or their savior. Your job is to protect your peace. Your job is to honor your journey and move forward with compassion, but not just for them, for yourself too. You've worked hard to heal, to grow, to understand the lessons that life has given you. Don't allow someone else's inability to confront their own mistakes to rob you of the peace you've earned. As we move through life, We must remember one fundamental truth: everything is impermanent. People come and go, seasons change, nothing stays the same, not even the most painful of experiences. This impermanence is not something to fear, but something to embrace. The only constant we have is the path we choose to walk. The peace we seek is not found in holding on to the past or trying to fix things that are beyond our control. It is built on self-understanding, on accepting that we cannot change others, and on detaching from the ego that ties us to old wounds. Embrace the teachings of the Buddha. Let go of the attachment to outcomes, to expectations, and to the need for validation from others. True freedom comes when we learn to let go of the things that no longer serve us, when we stop clinging to people or situations that are not meant for us anymore. When we live in alignment with our true selves, free from the need for approval or validation, we begin to experience a peace that transcends everything we once thought we needed. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this video has given you the strength to let go of the past and to reclaim your inner peace. If you found value in this message, please consider subscribing to our channel for more insights into how we can live with greater wisdom, compassion, and inner strength. Your journey toward peace and freedom is just beginning, and I'm here to walk alongside you. Until next time, take care of yourself, honor your peace, and remember, you are enough just as you are.